The war may be put on pause. Ukrainian experts have started talking about a new phase in the fight against Russia. What will it depend on? What does President Volodymyr Zelenskyy say about the course of the war? And what strategy is the new Ministry of Defense leadership proposing? We'll tell you more next. This is tsn.uaas. Give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the most important updates. Let's get started. The war in Ukraine could enter a phase of temporary truce within the next 6 months. Despite the current situation on the front lines and the intensity of Russian shelling, such a scenario was considered possible by Doctor of Economics and futurologist Andriy Dlihak. In an interview with tsn.ua, the expert emphasized that there are currently no grounds to speak of a complete end to the war. According to him, Russia's strategic goals remain unchanged. This is the strengthening of their own influence, pressure on Europe, and the destruction of Ukrainian statehood. At the same time, Andriy Dlihak suggests another scenario for how events might unfold. In his opinion, what is possible is not the end of the war, but a temporary truce or a halt to the hot phase of hostilities. At the same time, the confrontation could continue in other forms. The expert emphasizes separately, this is only one of the possible scenarios, built on an analysis of the current situation and not a forecast about the inevitable end of the war. According to Andriy Dlihak, the Kremlin currently sees no reason to stop hostilities, and it also still maintains a certain, albeit significantly smaller, advantage in certain sectors of the front. That is precisely why, the futurist believes, Moscow will continue to exert pressure as long as it has the resources to do so. According to him, the Russian economy is still capable of operating in a wartime mode, and the authorities have the ability to replenish personnel for new assaults. Furthermore, in the expert's opinion, Russia still leaves open the scenario of further mobilizing its economy and is counting on financial and economic support from China if needed. At the same time, Andriy Dlihak believes that the coming months could be some of the most difficult for Ukraine. According to his assessment, without significant external support, Russia is still capable of waging war for approximately half a year, and with large-scale economic aid from China, even up to 3 years. The expert also does not predict a decrease in missile and drone attacks. On the contrary, according to him, massive shelling of Ukrainian cities will continue and may intensify. The frequency of such attacks, in his opinion, will depend on how many missiles and drones Russia manages to stockpile, as well as on the targets it sets for strikes. Analyzing the Russian leadership, Andriy Dlihak notes that Vladimir Putin, in his opinion, surrounds himself with people who do not offer alternative solutions, but only carry out the tasks he sets. That is precisely why, the expert believes, one should not expect changes in the Kremlin's strategic goals in the near future. At the same time, the futurist suggests that the situation could be changed by further Ukrainian strikes on critical facilities within Russian territory. In his opinion, this refers not only to oil refineries or military enterprises, but also to logistics, export infrastructure, and other sectors upon which the Russian economy depends. He also does not rule out that by autumn, Ukraine will be able to increase the production of its own cruise missiles and begin the production of ballistic ones. Under such a scenario, Andriy Dlihak estimates the hot phase of the war could pause around March to April 2027. At the same time, he emphasizes this is not about the end of the war, but only a possible pause. In his opinion, Russia will most likely use this time to prepare for a new stage of the confrontation. As a reminder, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy recently also spoke about the further course of the war. In an interview with Fox News, the head of state stated that Russian leader Vladimir Putin is already losing the initiative in the war. According to Zelenskyy, Ukraine is increasingly strengthening its own defense industrial complex and is betting on modern technologies. The president reported that today there are already about 500 companies in Ukraine working on the development of advanced military technologies. Zelenskyy also recalled that at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Kremlin expected to capture Ukraine in 2 or 3 days. However, now, according to him, Ukraine is creating a powerful military technological industry that is intended to ensure an advantage in innovation over Russia. According to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the war is increasingly turning into a race of technologies. The president emphasized that modern weapons change very quickly, so Ukraine has to constantly improve its own developments. According to him, technologies on the battlefield are updated literally every 3 to 6 months, so the country must manage to adapt to new challenges. The head of state also emphasized that due to Russia's numerical superiority, Ukraine must stay ahead of the enemy not by the number of soldiers, but by the pace of development of defense technologies. This, according to him, is exactly what helps save the lives of Ukrainian defenders and civilians. Furthermore, Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that the buildup of Ukrainian military capabilities and regular strikes on important Russian targets have already deprived the Kremlin of its strategic initiative. According to the president, Russia loses about 30,000 soldiers every month. However, despite significant losses, Vladimir Putin shows no readiness to end the war. That is precisely why Zelenskyy is convinced the initiative on the battlefield is no longer in the hands of the Russia leader. Meanwhile, the new acting Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Yevhen Kmara, has already outlined his own vision of how Ukraine should change the course of the war. In an interview with Reuters, he stated that Kiev cannot fight Russia using a mirror response principle. According to Kmara, Ukraine must act asymmetrically, use its resources as effectively as possible, and inflict significantly greater losses on the enemy than it spends on such operations. The head of the defense ministry also emphasized that victory is determined not only by the quantity of weaponry, but also by effective resource management, logistics, and the timely provision of everything necessary to the Ukrainian military. According to him, there's already a clear understanding of which technologies and approaches could become the most effective on the battlefield in the future. Separately, Yevhen Kmara expressed hope that the cooperation between Ukraine and the United States would grow into a long-term strategic partnership. He noted that Ukraine already possesses unique experience in modern warfare, which could be useful to its allies. At the same time, he named the development of domestic defense production as one of the key priorities. In particular, according to the acting Minister of Defense, for the reliable protection of the Ukrainian sky, it is extremely important to gain the capability to produce Patriot anti-aircraft missile systems directly on the territory of Ukraine. And what do you think? When and how will the war in Ukraine end? Write to us in the comments. That's all the details for now. Look for more news in the upcoming episodes. To do this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Take care of yourselves.